We're still sleeping, huh? Good morning. There we go. Got to hear something. You got to give me a minute before you doze off. I need a little bit of time. Not hard to figure out what our topic is going to be this morning, given that it is Father's Day. There was a father that was asked if he would step in and help teach the Sunday school class of his young son. So he said, "Sure, I'll do it." So the next Sunday he comes in, he sits down with the kids. He said, "I'm going to describe something and I want you to tell me what it is." So I said, "Well, it lives in a tree. It likes to eat nuts and seeds. It has a long bushy tail. Most of the time it's brown." He's looking at the kids and they're looking at him like, "What?" And finally he says, "Doesn't anybody have any idea?" And one of the kids said, "Well, it sounds like a squirrel, but since we're in class, it's got to be Jesus." We'll just try not to have the same question this morning. All right. This is a special day. Every single one of us that were here has a biological father. That's just how the biology works. But not everyone has had the pleasure of growing up with a father of some kind. 18.4 million children in the United States under the age of 18 right now are growing up in fatherless homes. How bad is it? That's 1 in 4 kids. 1 in 4 kids are growing up without a biological step or adoptive father. 85% of the men in prisons come from fatherless homes. 70% of the juveniles, male and female, in state-operated institutions come from fatherless homes. Nearly any man can father a child. It takes a real man to be a daddy. And that was God's plan from the very start, that we would have a father and that we would have a mother. How can we tell that? 5th commandment. Honor your father and mother just as the Lord your God has commanded you, so that your days may be prolonged and that it may go well for you on the land which the Lord your God is giving you. So today is a day that we celebrate those fathers that guided us, that raised us, that disciplined us, that loved us. And what better way to do that than to go back and look at some examples throughout the Bible. I've picked 6. There's a lot more on either side of this equation. But we're going to talk about 3 fathers that were rather poor fathers. And then we'll talk about 3 fathers that seem to be pretty good fathers. The first one is a man named Eli the priest. He shows up in 1 Samuel chapters 1, 2, and 3. He was a priest of God that operated in the temple where Samuel's mother came to pray. And so Eli was partially responsible for helping to raise Samuel, which, keep that in mind, that's going to come back up in a moment. Eli had 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas. They were not good people. They had no respect for God. They had no respect for the people that they worked for. They were constantly taking advantage of the people. In 1 Samuel 3, 11 through 14, it says, "Then the Lord said to Samuel." Now God had started speaking to Samuel one night. If you'll remember the story, Samuel kept hearing somebody saying, "Samuel, Samuel." He thought it was Eli. And Eli finally realized it's God. He said, "You say, 'Yes, Lord, I'm listening.'" So this is the Lord talking to Samuel. "Behold, I am going to do a thing in Israel, and both ears of everyone who hears about it will ring. On that day I will carry out against Eli everything that I have spoken in regard to his house, from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am going to judge his house forever for the wrongdoing that he knew, because his sons were bringing a curse on themselves, and he did not rebuke them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the wrongdoing of Eli's house shall never be atoned for by sacrifice or offering." Eli refused to discipline his sons. And God removed Eli and his sons not only from the power they had, but from life. The second father that turned out to be a poor father is sort of a surprise, but given the story we just read, shouldn't be. And that's because it's Samuel. Samuel was the greatest judge over Israel ever, the greatest judge that they had. But it seems like he learned a little bit too much from Eli. Eli wasn't a good father. Then all of a sudden, Samuel grows up under his leadership and turns out not to be a good father. He had two sons, Joel and Abijah, and he had no control over them. And they were unsavory. In 1 Samuel 8, 1 through 5, it says, "Now it came about when Samuel was old that he appointed his sons as judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second Abijah. They were judging in Beersheba. His sons, however, did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after dishonest gain, and they took bribes and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah, and they said to him, 'Behold, you have grown old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint us a king to judge us like all the nations.'" So ironically, Samuel's sons become the catalyst by which the Israelites ask for a king. That catalyst came through Samuel. Samuel did not like the situation at all. He was very mad at the people. Matter of fact, God said, "Look, Samuel, they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me." But a lot of that blame lies with Samuel because he refused to discipline his sons. The third poor father is probably one that will surprise the most people, and that would be David. David was the greatest king that Israel had. He was a fearless warrior. He was one of the most prolific poets and songwriters in all time, and he was called the man after God's own heart. David could not discipline his children. In 2 Samuel 13, his son Amnon commits a terrible crime, and David refuses to do anything about it. It ends up causing bitter disputes and even murder among his own children. In 2 Samuel 13 through 19, his son Absalom murders his brother. Then he spends years undermining his father's authority. He staged a rebellion that nearly cost David his entire kingdom. Thousands of people died in battle. Tens of thousands, if not more, were taken away from their own homes and displaced. And yet, even then, David was still defending Absalom. He told his three army commanders in 2 Samuel 18, verse 5, "But the king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, saying, 'Deal gently with the young man Absalom for my sake.' And all the people heard when the king commanded all the commanders regarding Absalom." So after David's men defeated Absalom, and Absalom is trying to run from the battlefield, and he gets his hair caught in a tree, none of David's men would touch him. But Joab had had enough of Absalom. And so Joab asked his men, "Why didn't you kill him?" They said, "Well, David said not to." And Joab said, "Forget that." And he went and killed him. But then David, instead of rejoicing that they won the battle, spent the entire time mourning for his son Absalom, to the point where his army crept and snuck back into their homes. They were ashamed like they'd lost the battle. And that was enough for Joab. Joab was really angry then. He told David very specifically in 2 Samuel 19, "Then Joab came into the house to the king and said, 'Today you have shamed all your servants. You have saved your life today and the lives of your sons and daughters, the lives of your wives and the lives of your concubines, by loving those who hate you and by hating those who love you. For you have revealed today that commanders and servants are nothing to you. For I know today that if Absalom were alive and all of us were dead today, then it would be right as far as you're concerned.'" Joab says, everybody who fought for you today, you hate them because you would have given their lives in a second for that of the very person that caused all these problems. And the reason that kid caused all those problems is because David did not know how to discipline his kids. It's even scarier if you think about it, because David didn't know how to love his kids. That's the same problem that's rampant today. People get this thing in their mind that says, I love my kids, I'm going to let them do whatever they want. And love without discipline is just entitlement. It's not real love. So let's turn the tables a little bit. Let's look at a couple good fathers. Job is one of the first ones that comes to mind. He was a man who loved and disciplined his children in the right way. How did he do that? Job chapter 1, verses 4 and 5. His sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one of his day, and they would send word and invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When the days of feasting had completed their cycle, Job would send word to them and consecrate them, getting up early in the morning and offering burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, perhaps my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. And Job did so continually. He knew how to love his children. And when Satan took those kids away, he was devastated. He didn't get back to that joy until God had given him more children at the end of the whole story. The next father we're going to look at is somebody you might not remember. In Mark chapter 5, we meet a man named Jairus. Jairus was a synagogue official, and he came to Jesus because his 12-year-old daughter was sick. It says in Mark 5, 22 through 24, and one of the synagogue officials named Jairus came and upon seeing him fell at his feet and pleaded with him earnestly, saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her so that she will get well and live. And he went off with him, and a large crowd was following him and pressing in on him. Now, as they are on their way to Jairus' house, somebody from the house came and found them and said, Jairus, don't bother Jesus anymore. Your daughter's dead. It's done. But Jesus looked at Jairus and he said, do not be afraid, just believe. And so Jairus still had hope. And because of the faith of Jairus, his daughter was raised back to life. Because of the love that he had for her and the faith that he had in Jesus. Then our third good father is another one that may be a little surprising. It's a man named Joseph, not the one in the Old Testament, the husband of Mary, the woman to whom Jesus was born. You know, Joseph could have walked away from that situation. It said at one point that he was thinking about just leaving her. And an angel came to him and said, look, what she has conceived is by the Holy Spirit. And so don't leave her. But he still could have. He could have said, look, I don't want to put up with the years of people talking behind our backs. The years of people laughing at me because I married a woman who was pregnant before we got married. But he didn't. He stayed. And he stayed knowing that people were going to talk about them, knowing that it was going to be difficult. He carried Mary to Bethlehem as part of Herod's census and then acted there like a father and a husband. He took Mary and Jesus to Egypt when Herod started threatening him, just like a protective father would. He spent 3 terrifying days wandering around Jerusalem looking for a 12-year-old Jesus. To me, this is where the story really, really gets interesting. Because in Luke 2, 48 and 49, this is what we read. Joseph and Mary have just found Jesus in the temple. When Joseph and Mary saw him, they were bewildered. And his mother said to him, Son, why have you treated us this way? Behold, your father and I have been anxiously looking for you. And he said to them, why is it that you are looking for me? Did you not know that I had to be in my Father's house? This is the last time that we hear about Joseph. From this moment on, the father of Jesus is God. And we never hear of Joseph's name in relation to Jesus' life again in the scriptures. It seems like there is symbology that at the time where Jesus finally acknowledges God as his father, that his adoptive father is no longer part of that picture. Can we recognize the importance of having a heavenly Father who is loving and caring and wanting a relationship with us? That it's more than just coming and sitting and listening. When Jesus was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane in Mark chapter 14, verses 35 through 36, he went a little beyond them, his disciples, and fell to the ground and began praying that if it were possible, the hour might pass him by. And he was saying, Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. Interesting word here, Abba. Abba is a word in Aramaic that is just like the English words for daddy and for papa. And so he is a son who is deeply hurting, who is calling out to the one person he knows looks after him, takes care of him, loves him. He cried out in that garden just like a hurt and scared child does. And what father doesn't want to comfort their own child? How stressed and how scared was Jesus at this time? It tells us in Luke 22, 41 through 44. And Jesus withdrew from them about a stone's throw, that's his disciples, and he knelt down and began to pray, saying, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done. Now an angel from heaven appeared to him, strengthening him, and being in agony, he was praying very fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling down on the ground. The Greek word there, agonia, this is very intense anguish. It's as bad as it gets. And so Jesus is scared. He's stressed because for the first time he is going to be separated from his Father. And he's separated by my sin, by your sin. That's what pushed him away from his own Father. And it was so bad that he ended up having something called hematidrosis. It's an exceedingly rare condition where extreme physical or emotional stress causes capillaries to rupture, forcing blood to seep into the sweat glands and exude from intact skin. I understand this one. When I was just a year or two old, my parents rushed me to the hospital with a 104-degree temperature. Not only are they worried I might not make it through, but at a temperature that high, you could really damage the brain. You could come out not being the same. And as soon as we came in, they started putting me in ice cold water, just tubs of it. My dad was so afraid. He began to sweat blood. When Jesus was that stressed, he calls for his Father without hesitation. First person he thinks about. When we talk about the symbology of the Bible, which I strongly believe in, we don't see more of that come This is the very last verse of the Old Testament. Malachi chapter 4, verse 6. He will turn the hearts of fathers back to their children, and the hearts of children back to their fathers, so that I will not come and strike the land with complete destruction. This verse has two meanings. One of them is the hearts of man are going to turn back to God. Jesus opens a door that wasn't open before, where we can approach God now. God's Spirit can reside inside of us. But it has another meaning. It's radical reconciliation, intergenerational healing. This is healing those rifts that tend to come as one of us gets older and the other is getting older in their time, and suddenly what dad believes is not as important, right? This is that time of restoration, of putting together broken family bonds, mutual respect, and a shared spiritual legacy. Because here's the thing, in Jesus, there's no race, there's no color, there's no age, there's no familial distinctions beyond brother, sister, father. That's all that Jesus cares about. Doesn't matter where we come from. And so as the Old Testament closes, they say this is the end of this chapter. What comes after now is the healing. The Old Testament is the plan. God was getting everything positioned to where he could bring his son in and return something that had been gone since the Garden of Eden. And so you have a father who is desperate, who spent thousands of years trying to set up a relationship with you. That's all he wants. That's all he's done. And so when we first need to call on someone, he's the one we need to call on first. He's the one we need to rely on first. He's the one that we need to call on the most, and not just a little bit, but with all our heart, all our soul, all our mind, all our strength. Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 7. We sing a version of this in a song called Hear, O Israel. It says, Hear, Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength. These words which I am commanding you today shall be on your heart, and you shall repeat them diligently to your sons, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. This is the Father that we have, who's active and present. Some of us have fathers that are no longer here. Some of us may have fathers that never really were present. Some of our fathers might not have been biological. But some of our fathers did the best that they could. They took everything they had and gave it a shot and screwed it up sometimes, but just simply did all they could. But you have a father's love. He'll never mess it up. Never. And he is desperately, desperately looking to have a relationship with you. He doesn't care what you've been through. He doesn't care about anything except establishing that relationship. Because as long as we live on this earth, we can act like things are fine. At that moment we die, if we don't have that relationship, nothing else is going to matter. But that has to be established now. That has to be put as a priority now. Today, we need to start asking. We need to start relying. When we stress, we need to know who to go to. And that's our Father. If that's a relationship that you need to repair, you have that time this morning. So may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and give you peace. Let's all stand together.